Hey, and welcome back to the next episode of the Right Hand Drive Guys podcast, the podcast for guys who like right hand drives. I'm Bobby. This is Aaron.
Yo.
And welcome back. Today is episode 116. And today is one that maybe you've been silently waiting for. I don't know.
Who, me?
Yeah, when I brought it up, you got pretty excited.
I'm like, oh, that? You just want to do an episode on that? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that? That would be the
S-Chassis.
The S-Chassis. So
yes.
I'm sure everybody knows what an S-Chassis is, but what is an S-Chassis if you had to define it?
So an S-Chassis would be a Nissan that started in the mid-'80s, was relevant all the way to 2002, rear-wheel drive platform, and, yeah, fun little sports car.
So that would be the S-Chassis.
That would be
your
the
definition.
S-Chassis, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I mean, Aaron is much more versed in the S-Chassis than I. I never got the chance to own one until a few years ago or last year, whichever it was, when I had that S14 that I'm sure you guys remember.
Yeah. I think it was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was fun. It was my first experience with an SR20 rear-wheel drive, actually sorted decently.
Yeah.
So it was cool. It definitely taught me a few things about rear-wheel drive and, like, what not to do, like just bounce it off the rev limiter when you're trying to have fun, But I do remember, way back in the day, like, late 90s, early 2000s, I had never heard of the S-Chassis. Yeah. And then my buddy Randy, who helped feed the love of cars for me, all of a sudden he was talking about this Sylvia. And I remember specifically, I can remember like it's yesterday, because I'm like, Sylvia? Like,
what is that?
What, that's your grandmother's best friend? Like, what do you mean, And ironically enough, he ended up marrying a lady named Sylvia. So that tells you, yeah. But so that was his thing, too, was the Sylvias and the fact that they were rear-wheel drive, 4-cylinder turbo, the whole thing, right? The SR20. So
because, like, dude, in the mid 90s, there wasn't that many, like, cheap rear-wheel drive cars. Like, most of the cheaper domestic cars, like, were all front-wheel drive, for, the assembly line to make them cheaper, whatever. But the Nissan, in the States, it was the 240SX. It was unique because it was a rear-wheel drive, but it was still kind of like a compact car.
Right. If anybody didn't know that 240SX and the Sylvia are
I'm
actually
sure everyone knows that.
Right. But, yeah, I was going to say, like, you got it now.
Yeah.
They're the same thing. 240SX being
same
the
chassis,
US.
yeah.
Right. 240 being the US version, Sylvia being the Japanese, and I'm sure a few other markets version. So tell us, man, like, where did it start? Like, what's the deal?
So technically, I think the newer wave of S-Chassis started with the S12. And the S12 came out in like 84, ran all the way to 87 in Japan. And it's kind of not that sought after. A lot of people don't like them. It's just kind of, I don't know, a little bit too old, didn't have that great of technology, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. It didn't stop people from modifying them. You still see them every once in a while, and they do look cool. They kind of look like, they kind of look like a knockoff AE86 in a sense,
with
because
the flip-up headlights.
Because they got the pop-up headlights and the long hatchback. But, I mean, I don't know too much about those, so we'll just kind of gloss over that.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, after that, it started with the S13.
And that's the first one to have the SR20?
No, actually. The S13s, when they first came out, they came out in 88, and there was the Sylvia and also the 180SX.
Right.
So if you know Nissan and their numbers kind of always contribute to, like, the engine size, I guess you say.
Right.
So the 180SX was a 1.8 liter turbo.
Is that the CA18?
That's the CA18. And they had a DE and DET, turbo, non-turbo. But yeah, that's where it all started. The SR20 didn't start coming into the cars until 91.
Oh, I see.
So the initial the initial, first few years, the 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇s, I guess, came with the CA18, which I don't know. That's another one of those that people kind of forgot about and pushed to the wayside. And
well, I mean, at 168 horsepower versus the SR20's 205, it's easy to just push it to the side, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So the S13, so that's like, I think the first one that became synonymous with drifting, right? I mean, in the
whether it be the Silvia or the 180SX.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which, for those who don't know, the Silvia was the coupe with, the, I don't know how to explain that, rectangle headlights, whereas the 180 was the hatchback with the pop-up headlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people might not know that because we didn't have that variance in the state.
Right, exactly. Yeah, most people just think a 180 is a Silvia.
Right,
like,
or
not
vice
most
versa. Yeah,
people,
I mean, back in the day,
people.
people would put Silvia badges on their 180SX style build, and it was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I could see that. And the 180SX actually was like the longer running platform. The 180 went for a long time.
10 years, dude.
Yeah.
10 years they had the same chassis. It went through a few different updates, I guess you could say. Let's see. In 91, it got an update, and that's when it got the SR20. Had another update in 94, and that was just like exterior little things.
This is the 180?
This is the 180SX. And then again in 96, the final version, that's the one that's kind of sought after. That's the 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇 version.
Yeah.
The Type X 180SX body kits. That's the best looking one by far, and that's the one that I feel are most sought after. And a lot of people base their 180SX builds on that look.
I see. And so, I see that the S13 weighed 2,700 pounds, which, I mean, that's full out, right? I'm sure guys were getting these down to 23.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Something like that. So rear wheel drive, turbo, light.
Right.
That's like that's the concoction for drifting, right?
Yeah, and a good suspension setup. Like from the S13 all the way up to the S15, the suspension, the style, and most of the parts, even with little modification, can fit all platforms.
Right, which is sweet.
So
that was
cool.
smart.
And it was also a solid, good setup that you could tune a little bit to, I don't know, make some adjustments for more grip or whatever you were doing.
Right.
So it was a very well thought out car, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they also share a bunch of, I don't know, you can swap a bunch of parts with the Skylines and the Z32s, which were like the Grand Touring cars, which they're bigger brothers, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So easy upgradable too.
So these were lighter and more nimble.
Right, more compact, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess you could kind of compare it to Honda and Acura, the way that a lot of those parts will fit either platform.
Oh, right.
Like it's like the best cars of these times they kind of were the best because you could share parts, even stock parts from different chassis. Like, whatever, let's just say 300ZX brakes on your S13.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or whatever the case may be. So
parts bin cars, I think they called them.
Right.
Because they like all came from the same bin pretty much.
Which is sweet. I mean, in that sense. I mean, the way they do it now, it's not as sweet. You know? I mean, like the FL5 behind me and then the Integra Type S share a lot of parts.
Right.
But not like they did back in the day.
Right,
you know? So S13 and the 180 kind of really popped it off, especially, in the drift circuit, so to speak. I remember back in the day watching D1 GP or something like that, and that's where I really fell in love with like the S15 and whatnot, was seeing them drifting sideways like on those huge speedways or the courses, and it was like all the best drivers drove S-Chassis.
Yeah, because I mean, that was pretty much the car back in the day in Japan. Like that for competition, like you couldn't really beat them. There was the Skylines, a few JZXs, but for the most part, for a very long time, there was a lot of S-Chassis, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
And so obviously you've heard of the S13, then there's the S14.
Yes, the S14.
And so what do you think, what they really change? I mean, we all know, the 𝐇𝐀𝐒 was more rounded and a little bigger. They kind of increased the size a bit.
Yeah, I believe it bumped it up into a different class in Japan, a class of vehicle it was technically. But yeah, the S14 was, a new car in 94. They had two different trim levels, the Ks and the Qs. Ks being the upper model with the turbo SR20, which also the SR20 got a revamp that year. It came with VCT, variable cam timing, and also had an upgraded 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇𝐓 turbo. So a little more power, a little more, a little more fun, I guess you could say.
Right.
A little more car.
Some good upgrades there. Like you said, that VCT and a bigger turbo over the S13s, and that's probably part of that whole kind of oomph, giving it some more oomph. But the sad part that I know a lot of people kind of shun the S14 for at first was the absence of like a lift back. Yeah, because now if you're in Japan, of course, you can still get the 180 like we talked about.
Right.
But over here, there's no more. It's all just.
Well, dude, in the States, they actually marketed the S14 for single business women, like bachelorettes, pretty much. Like,
I wonder how it worked. Like, did those women were women buying these cars?
I don't know. I think so.
Wow.
Like, I mean, I think it worked for them. But I remember coming across an article and then specifically saying that in America, they specifically pushed that car to, those women that were buying, I guess, Lexuses back in the day. Like, that type of car, that sporty, I don't know, import car, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. It's looks on the lower level, kind of, like, price-wise. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Right. Doesn't have a ton of power, but, it still looks cool. The part, I guess you could say.
So, I mean, pretty much the S14 is like the middle, right? And then there was two versions because there's the 𝐇𝐀𝐒 and then the often sought after 𝐇𝐀𝐒, right? Yeah. So what's the major difference between those two?
Headlights. Front end.
Just pretty the front end?
Yeah, I think there was other small changes here and there, but like small interior patterns, and I think there was a tweak to the turbo, but nothing crazy. Nothing crazy in that.
You're right. Yeah. No, you're right. It's the front end and some little arrow
tail
things.
Lights too. Different tail lights that had the lines across.
The lines, the iconic. Yeah, those are sweet. I mean, and that was like, I don't know, sold until 99 or something.
98,
right?
Yeah.
98. And so then, right, so there's this whole thing, right, about how at one time there was an S14, S15, and 180SX all brand new on Nissan's showroom floor.
Yeah, dude.
They overlapped like that.
In 98. And then also the 33.
And the 34.
And the 34. Dude,
wow.
Imagine
walking into Nissan in 1998. Oh my God, dude. Yeah, they'd have.
Give me a time machine. I swear to God, I'm going back to 1998.
I'd have to hit the showers after that, dude. I'd be done, dude.
I'm hitting something.
Yeah, that's for dang sure. So,
but hold on now. With the S14, with the 𝐇𝐀𝐒 especially, we can't forget about the 270R.
Oh, true. Yes,
the Nismo 270R.
Yeah, the 270R, which. I have gotten to see in real life at a Mori factory, and it's sick. Minus, not super in love with the hood scoop.
Yeah,
it's
it
like
is
a little out of place. Yeah, but regardless, it was a sweet car. The interior was friggin' awesome. And then if you have been listening to the podcast and you know that Mark Bonna came on, he told the story about his getting vandalized. Yeah. The dude has a 1 of 14 or how many? I don't remember how many, but it was not a lot of 270Rs.
There's 50, I believe.
50. So 1 of 50, and you never see them.
Never.
Like you never see them.
Never, dude.
The
They're true
the
unicorns.
Chrome Cars guy has one. I know that.
Yeah.
And, you know, so there's, I mean, like you out of 50, you've seen maybe 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are awesome cars. I mean, it's a full Nismo build out package. Like
Yeah.
down
You always
to
see
the
the
bone.
parts pop up for it. Like, you know, they have like the S14s had the door panel that kind of morphed into the dash. Real cool.
Yeah.
And they have like this really cool boost gauge that goes like in this vent they had on the door.
Oh, that's legit.
And that's one of the coolest things about it, I think. That, as silly as it might sound, the hood scoop is like out of place and how like off it kind of looks. It's one of those things that's unique to it. And I don't know. I think that makes it that much cooler.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't love the hood scoop, but I get it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like, when you look, personally, when I look at the rest of the car, I'm like, what the hell's that thing doing?
Yeah.
Like, it just seems like something you'd make fun of some guy that was on his Cavalier.
Well,
Yeah.
dude, also speaking of that, so the 𝐇𝐒𝐇𝐓 S14, the S14A, had an Autech version, the MFT. And kind of same thing with that one, dude. They came with this giant wing on the back. Like, dude, it looks like, I don't even know, like
Ridiculous.
the Plymouth like Superbird Daytona.
yeah.
Like, it looks like one of those type
Wow,
wings.
that
Like
big.
yeah, it's huge. I don't know. Like, it's one of those things you love or hate it.
Right.
It's
yeah.
like, it's
I mean,
back
and
then
some
it
guys
was,
do love it.
Yeah.
Some guys really hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Autech version was also very rare. So like the S14s, if they had a special model, there weren't many of them made.
Right. And I mean, if you think about that timeline, 95-ish to 98,
Yeah.
it was not the best time, so to speak. I mean, it was, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like, you know, once they hit the S15,
Yeah.
that they kind of, even though there was no like 270R version,
Right.
they kind of were a little more, I don't know, they had more models, right? And so let's get into that. So in 98, right, the 180SX,
Yep.
gone.
Uh-huh.
So
Final
if
year.
you weren't on that sales floor creaming your pants in 98, that was it.
Yeah.
Same with the S14, right?
Yeah. Out of there.
98, done. So they're clearing house, literally.
Yeah.
But then they bring on the S15 with
The
its new
S15.
body lines, its upscale appearance, like its whole
Yeah.
different car than the S14, right? And
On the outside.
on the outside, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is all that matters to the consumer that's looking.
Right.
The guys like us, sure, like, well, what's under the hood?
Right. Right.
But like the average consumer is like, oh, that's pretty. Those body lines are sleek, you
Yeah.
know? And so
definitely
yeah.
on the outside. That's where
Right.
the biggest change was with
Yeah.
the S15.
and they did a super, super
They absolutely
job.
did. I feel like the styling of that car still could be a brand new car today. 100%. If you made a few changes to it and I don't know, you brought an alien here and asked him if you thought that was a brand new car, he would probably say yes.
Yeah, it keeps up. And so an interesting little kind of factoid is that the S13, okay, because in Japan, right, there are different scale sizes of cars, and you're taxed based on the size of your car.
Right.
That's dimensions, weight, everything, right? The S13 was in a low class of road tax, and so therefore it sold really well. They saw reduced sales in the S14, and the feedback said because the S14 got bigger than the S13, right?
Yeah.
The S14 was in the next bracket of road tax, and so therefore was not economically a good choice for some of these people. So then, because they're thinking big picture.
Right.
So then when they're designing the S15, they specifically designed it to the exact dimensions
So they brought it back.
of the lower road tax so that their sales would go up.
Nice.
See, those were the type of decisions they were making back then to get their customer to where they needed to be instead of just following the trend, right?
Right.
Like,
I wonder if that's why they didn't come with like the seam sealer and stuff, you know, trying to cut
Yeah,
back some
maybe.
weight.
it could have been, man. I mean, that's a thing though, because then we didn't get the S15 here, so it wouldn't even matter to us. But they really were thinking of the consumer, not like the board members at that time, right? But yeah, I mean the S15, man. Like, so what like, what's the difference? Because you hear people say Spec S, Spec R,
Yeah.
you know, like, whereas, you know, the S14 was the S14, right?
Yeah, right. The K's and the Q's.
The K's and the Q's, right? So, but these get this special
specification R.
Yeah.
Sounds cool, right?
Yeah, but what's the difference?
So
like, what? I don't get it.
So Spec R would be the higher model. It's going to be the turbo SR20 with a 6-speed transmission and a viscous LSD. I'm sorry, not a viscous. What's the word? It's not the viscous. Helical.
Yeah.
Thank you. It comes with a helical LSD, whereas the Spec S, that's going to be NA, 5-speed, and has the option of a viscous LSD.
I see.
And
both
had aero versions, which include
which is cool.
Front bumpers, skirts, a wing, all that. So
yeah. So right, you could get the Spec S in the aero version, and it would look pretty cool. It just wouldn't
have that go.
Yeah. And so I know that the Spec R also had, of course, the 6-speed, but it also had the brakes from the 300ZX as opposed to like the basic brakes on the Spec S, and a stiffer chassis as well. So this Spec R racing, I'd assume, right? I mean, or whatever it means, clearly ready to kind of hit the track from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
And these came with that better turbo, right?
Yeah, and they also had even a newer updated T28 that had a few little changes, and it has like a divider between the wastegate and the exhaust, I guess you could say, for a little bit better flow. But that was basically it on the engine differences.
Yeah, and I feel like when the of course, when the S15 came out, the SR20 was already popular. They're already making aftermarket parts.
Yeah, 100%.
There's support. But I feel like when the S15 came out at that time, you have the S15 comes out, the R34 comes out, aftermarket support ramped right up for these cars, and especially when it comes to exterior aero and all of that type of thing, because it was the epitome of the driver's car, right? I mean, a Spec R rolling off the factory line, dude, that's sick. You get to work on that thing.
Right. And dude, at that time, they had the S13, R32, that was sick. They had the R33, S14s, those were sick. And this is just the progression. This is the next big thing.
And
in 99, did they know that this is going to be the end of that thing just 3 years later?
Probably not, especially not everybody that was so excited for it, right? They assumed this was going to go. I mean, dude, they just closed out the 180 after 10 years.
Yeah.
They assumed the S15.
Which sounds like nothing in comparison nowadays. 10 years on a.
Compared to the GTR, the R35. Yeah. I mean, but you know what I'm saying? Just 3 years. All this work, all this development, everything for just 3 years.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I noticed, about the S15 was that compared to the S13, the power was almost 80 horsepower more.
That's good. That's decent.
From the original S13
with the CA.
Right.
Or is that?
That's with the SR20 205 horsepower.
Oh yeah.
And then when you come down to the S15, I'm sorry, it was 40, not 80. I was getting excited because I just remember
about to say, who turned up the boost?
that thing. Yeah. But 247. So, I mean, that's a 40 horsepower gain. That means they put,
that's
even though
good.
It's a 35-year-old motor at that point, well, not now, but, at that point, it's an old motor.
Yeah.
They are still tweaking it to get that last little bit out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and they had bigger injectors on the S15.
Makes sense. I mean, that's how they're getting these extra HPs, right?
Yeah. So, dude, you could turn up the boost on one of those and, have some sort of handheld tuner, have your Apexi Power FC mounted on the dash, dude.
Velcroed to the dash.
Yeah, dude, hit a few buttons there, dude, and you're set. You're hitting 300 horsepower.
Right.
You're hitting the
Wangon.
The
tires.
You're hitting the Toge.
Yeah. And just to think, 300 horsepower, and that was exciting to us. And now, whatever, the the professional drifters are putting tons of horsepower out of these things.
Ungodly
just
amounts.
spinning the tires all their way around the track. But something that was interesting about the S15, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just stop there, which, as we all know, the S13 had a convertible, right? It wasn't bad, I mean, like, convertibles are hard. Like,
they're weird. Okay, so, like, they were super weird. They were originally coupe cars that got sent out to have modified.
I see, upfitted, yeah.
Yeah, and in Japan, 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇𝐓 did it, and in America, someone else did it stateside. I forget who it is. I want to say it was ASC or one of those companies.
Why? Like, why would they do that?
For a convertible.
ASC,
for a convertible
yeah.
model, yeah.
Like, that's interesting. Like, just
I had an S13 convertible at one time, so that's how I knew. And taking it apart, you see these like random brackets and like braces, like tying things into each other that aren't like that on the regular coupes. But it's interesting to see. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like, so the big thing between the 15 and 13 was that, like you said, so like, 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐃 did it, for the S13.
Yeah.
But this time, instead of what you're saying, converting, they created a whole different, like, car, kind of.
Yeah, for the S15.
Right, exactly. And so 𝐇𝐀𝐃 created a fully retractable, multi-section hardtop instead of a cloth top that pulls back.
Yeah, which was back in that time, dude, that was cutting edge.
Yeah.
Like, hardtop convertible, like, you're not seeing that on too many other cars.
Not like
I can't think of any
Japanese
back in the day.
tuner cars.
Yeah, no,
like
especially
maybe
not
like
that.
a Benz or like, so, that type of luxury.
Higher end luxury car.
Yeah.
I can't think of any though, really. But they definitely had something cool there.
Yeah, and so that was called the Varietta, and so that's the thing is they only put them in the Spec S's.
Yeah,
1,100 of them. We've seen a few in person.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, convertible cars are hard, no matter what.
You gotta have the top down.
Yeah,
that's the only thing.
When the top, even with the hard top, it's still. They just don't look the same.
Right, especially from the back. They got like this long extended trunk that houses the roof. But yeah, keep the top down if you got one of those.
But they are beautiful cars for sure. And I mean, that kind of rounds out just the explainer on, what's up with the S-Chassis. What are the S-Chassis?
Yeah.
What's your favorite S-Chassis?
Favorite S-Chassis? Mine's
like, period. If you could have one in here, you can only have one for the rest of your life. Like, otherwise, like,
yeah. That's, I want to say right off the rip, I want to say S13s or an S13 coupe or Sylvia in the two-tone. Just because that's the one that always comes out in my head. That's the one I'm always thinking about. But I've never had an S15. And I've only had S14s for short amounts of time. Haven't had like a super nice one. So it's hard saying, but I don't know. I like to stay true to the core, I guess you could say. So I would say an S13.
Word, yeah.
Or Sylvia.
The S13.
Yeah, what about you? What are you thinking?
White spec R S15. Like,
course,
come on.
Duh.
Come on, I mean, the other ones are cool, and like, I like that kooky S14. That's like, if I was gonna get something else, I would get a true one. The one I had was converted.
Yeah.
I mean, S13s never really grew on me. And I don't know. There's nothing like seeing an S13 coming around. S15 coming around a corner sideways.
Yeah.
Just like tearing through the tire. Like, it's like it was meant to do it. Like,
yeah.
And I'm sure Sylvias do good in other racing styles.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
dude,
do all right.
Even in drag. Like, there's, even in America, I think Mosworks has this crazy SR20 drag. I think it's an S15. I believe. And it's insane. HKS had a drag 180SX back in the day.
Right. I mean,
they did
it's
everything.
just like drifting was really their like forte and where they shine, I mean,
right.
Especially affordability wise 10, 15 years ago, know. So we cannot end this, it came to me, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, let's hear it.
We can't end this without you telling us, what in the hell is a freaking S-80? Like, what the hell's a friggin' S-80, dude? Like,
all right. So, let's see. So going back to how we were talking about, you know, these parts bin cars where all these different parts swap over to different chassis and all this stuff. With the S13s, it was the same thing with the front ends. So you could put a 180 SX front end on a Silvia and vice versa. You could put a Silvia front on a 180.
I see.
So the S-80 was like I don't know. It's a Silvia front 180 SX. And Nissan produced them in conjunction with 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇𝐓, I believe.
Yeah.
And I tried finding more info on that back in the day, but I couldn't really come across much. But they do have like ads, and I couldn't really come across to find if they actually marketed this and made these cars or not.
Yeah.
They definitely have marketing for them and, you know, ads and pictures and all this stuff of them. But I'm not, me personally, I'm not sure if they actually, Nissan released them.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard like a lot of, or seen a lot of debate on that.
Yeah.
Because they can only locate one true. You know, of course, people have like made S-80s.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but they can only find like one true one, which they speculate is the one that was actually in the ads, you know, and they didn't get the feedback that they thought they would in order to fully produce them. Even though they already had the parts, creating this whole new, like, not chassis, but this whole new car, S-80, you know, they just weren't getting the interest to like go through with it. But I mean, for someone like 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐇𝐓, that must have been sick. Like, they're thinking like they're about to get hooked up.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
They're about to have a contract with Nissan to swap parts on the cars.
Right,
like,
right.
That's sick, you know?
Yeah, I remember seeing like posters of their shop back in the day, and they had like the S-80 logo somewhere.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing. I'm like, damn, that was sick. And we tried to visit that shop.
Yeah, but it was gone.
It was
like
long
we're like
gone.
walking in circles. We're on this whatever block in Japan,
In
and,
Osaka, I believe, right?
yeah, where we're in. So this is where it says 𝐇𝐀𝐒𝐄 is, and we're looking like on Google Maps, and you can see the shop and the big sign, and like all of a sudden it hit us.
Like, oh, this
is right
this
where
apartment
it was.
right here.
Yeah, this new apartment.
This dude's house we're walking around right here is
we
actually,
parked in his driveway. Like, literally, we're just looking for kid art, man. Like,
yeah. Thought I'd see a sticker or something, but no, dude, it was
nothing at all.
unfortunately it was long gone, man, and
yeah,
that's a bummer.
and that's the story of, you know, plenty of brands that came in and left, because sometimes when you're a brand, time can pass you by quicker than you realize, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, the S-Chassis, dude, I think...
Well, hold on. You know what they called the Silvia with the 180SX front end on it? A 1Via.
What the heck? Is that a joke?
No, that was just something that they started coining when they started doing it. But I always thought that was kind of fun. A 1Via. I'm like...
1Via.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know if that flows like the S-80.
Yeah, S-80 flows a lot better.
Yeah, man, the S-Chassis is legendary. It absolutely has its place in like our culture's history.
Yeah,
I don't
has
think
a place in my heart.
Yeah, I don't think you could ever, you know, take this away. You know, you see that rendering of the S16 Spec R, and it's just like, you don't like it?
Dude, it's just like, quit teasing already.
I know,
like, dude, we're ready.
It's friggin' sick, though. Like, if Nissan would just pay attention and actually put that out and then not let people charge way over MSRP.
Right.
Like, they have a car, they have one still.
Right.
They just cut the GTR.
Yeah.
They have the Z, but that, dude,
Right,
like, I never even looked twice at a Z. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
they're cool, but not like that S16
Right.
like would be. So we got our hopes that whether, you know, Honda joins ranks with Nissan and hopefully helps them get back to their motorsports roots, or Nissan just realizes that they need to kind of cater a little bit more to the people with disposable income like our age,
Yeah.
you know, who want an S16, who want
Right.
an R36, or who want, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully that happens. But if not, we do always have these S-chassis that, you know, are still around. They're not cheap.
No.
You know, a
absolutely
Spec R
not.
S15 is, you know, 30 or north, you
Yeah.
know. And you got to think about this, though. The Z, I think, is 60, like 49 to 60.
Yeah.
Dude, if you made a $49,000 or $45,000 S16,
Yeah.
dude, you're only $10,000 to $15,000 off from a 99,
Yeah.
dude. So, like, I feel like there's room there. People are
Right.
still paying this. You still see people bringing them in.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's legendary. It's created people's whole lives. These S-chassis have changed the course of people's lives.
Yeah. Whether good or bad.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember the first time you crashed an S-chassis.
Oh, yeah, dude.
But yeah, man, we hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We love the S-chassis. We know you guys do too. We figured after 115 episodes, we needed to finally do it some justice.
Yeah.
But for episode 116, all about the S-chassis, I'm Bobby. This is Aaron.
See ya.
Peace.